Hello class, my name is Michael Schearer, and for my multimedia presentation, I wanted to present a slightly different version of a reading that we encountered in week 2 of this course. The article by Dr. Kickler was entitled, What's in a County Name? The article traced the origins of county names in North Carolina and provided some stories regarding the history of those areas. For this presentation, I chose to focus on York County, Pennsylvania, and specifically the origins of its name and some of the important history associated with York County. For this presentation, I based my research primarily upon resources available through the York County History Center, which was previously known as the Historical Society of York County, the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, which maintains Pennsylvania's historical markers, and other materials in the public domain, such as out-of-copyright books and digital resources available through the Library of Congress. The image on the right is a portrait of George R. Prowell, once the curator and librarian of the Historical Society of York County, a member of the National Geographic Society, a member of the American Historical Association, and the author of the 2-volume History of York County, Pennsylvania. Although it might seem obvious who and why certain places were named, sometimes the lack of direct historical evidence requires historians to identify the reasons based upon what data is available. Such is the case regarding the name of York County. There are 2 explanations for the naming of York County, Pennsylvania, and while there are reasonable arguments for either, it is also fair to say that they are not mutually exclusive. The first explanation comes from George Prowell, who explains that York County was created out of the western extension of Lancaster County, which itself was named for Lancashire, England. Its eastern neighbor in England was Yorkshire, which became the source of the name for York County, Pennsylvania. The second explanation is that York County was named for James, Duke of York, later James II, King of England, who, as I previously indicated, maintained a close relationship with William Penn, the proprietor of Pennsylvania Colony. In the end, either or both explanations are reasonable descriptions of the source of the name of York County, Pennsylvania. For the remainder of this presentation, I wanted to identify several instances where significant events in American history happened in York County. The first one is of significant pride to York, but not widely known by the general public. In 1777, when General Howe brought British troops from New York to attack Philadelphia, the Continental Congress retreated several times, first to Lancaster for a single day, and then to York from September 30th, 1777 until June 27th, 1778. During this 9-month period, in which York was considered the capital of the United States, the Continental Congress debated and adopted the Articles of Confederation, the first written constitution of the United States. The picture on the right is the reconstructed Colonial Courthouse in York, where the Continental Congress met at the time. Just across the street from the Colonial Courthouse is the historic Golden Plough Tavern, which is pictured on the left, and the General Horatio Gates House on the right, where Gates stayed at the time. General Gates had taken credit for the American victory at Saratoga in the fall of 1777. Gates wrote of his victory directly to Congress, who appointed him president of the Board of War, and Congress also at the time considered replacing Washington as the commander-in-chief. The Conway Cabal, as it was called, sought to have Washington replaced with Gates, who lobbied for the position himself. Directly in front of these buildings, you'll notice the statue of a man giving a toast. The statue recounts an incident in which Lafayette raised his glass there to toast General Washington, which reaffirmed the support of the French for the American cause. Whether Lafayette's toast had any role in ending the Conway cabal is a debate for historians, but it is one that York County counts as part of its history. A second Civil War incident in York County will go down into history as one of those what might have been scenarios. Just days before the Battle of Gettysburg, a brigade of Confederate troops under General John Gordon, as part of General Jubal Early's division, sought to cross the Susquehanna at Wrightsville on the river's western shore. The Columbia-Wrightsville Bridge, the longest covered bridge in the world at the time, would have allowed the Confederate Army to have access directly to Harrisburg, which was a major training and supply hub for Union forces. The undermanned, undergunned, and untested recruits of the Pennsylvania militia attempted to blow up a span of the bridge with gunpowder, but that effort failed. Colonel Jacob G. Frick of the Pennsylvania militia then ordered the bridge burned, which prevented Confederate forces from advancing across. Whether the capture of the Wrightsville Bridge would have resulted in a Confederate advance to Harrisburg is another story for historians to speculate about, but it demonstrated the central role that York County played during the Gettysburg campaign of the Civil War. Our third and final example of York County's encounter with history takes us forward to the 20th century and is the subject of my research project for this class. Fred C. Perkins ran a small battery manufacturing business in York, Pennsylvania. His story became newsworthy when he was arrested and spent 18 days in jail on a warrant for violating the minimum wage provisions of the National Recovery Administration, or NRA. Perkins' story reached the pages of major city newspapers, and he was ultimately vindicated when the Supreme Court found the NRA unconstitutional in 1935. The image on the right is a screen capture from the March of Time, a series of short news segments shown in movie theaters from 1935 until 1951. The segment on Fred Perkins was part of the very first episode of the series. By the time the NRA was found unconstitutional by the Supreme Court as both an improper delegation of power and having exceeded the Commerce Clause's power, hundreds of prosecutions were underway and convictions had already obtained in several cases. Scholarly analysis across multiple studies confirmed that the NRA was an economic failure. For nearly 2 years of its existence, the NRA was also a disaster for economic liberty. In an attempt to prop up prices and wages, the NRA's code provisions criminalized existing voluntary employer-employee relationships and induced severe disruptions into the labor market. NRA's upward pressure on wages, especially on low-wage industries in the South, exacerbated trends towards mechanization and accelerated the replacement of blacks with whites. According to the principal economist and director of research for the NRA itself, this government-directed economic discrimination put 500,000 black workers on relief in 1934. While more recent revisionist accounts of the New Deal attempt to address the negative aspects of the New Deal in broad strokes, these histories do little more than repeat a handful of anecdotal stories without any depth into the victims themselves. My research project seeks to address the inadequacy of these accounts by detailing the life story of one of the New Deal's most prominent opponents. The goal of this multimedia presentation has been to demonstrate just a small amount of what local history archival research is available to you. The first and best source for local research is often county historical societies, supplemented by other materials in the public domain, such as out-of-copyright books and digital resources available through the Library of Congress. Additionally, given my proximity to these locations, I was able to visit them to take photographs myself. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, and I look forward to your constructive feedback. Thank you.